So talking about software as a medical device, Richard, could you please tell us the biggest challenges for getting a product to market when it's a software device?
I think really you've got to reflect on the opportunities to start with software as a medical device. We've seen such a massive change in the use of technology in the medical sector over the last, my lifetime certainly, increasingly over the last 10 to 15 years. And the ideas and the things we can do with telehealthcare and so on, are truly exciting things to do, and really expand on the portable power, computing power, in a lot of cases we carry around in our pockets every day. That sort of level of connectivity, not between ourselves and medical device products, to monitor and help us monitor and control our health, and through to communicating with our medical personnel who are going to help us to monitor these things. So there's a lot of products out there, and they work on these mobile devices that we all have these days. An amazing amount of technology at our fingertips. And I think the biggest challenge is controlling and doing and rolling out these opportunities in a controlled way, which is sustainable. And one of the biggest challenges I find, especially when using these, portable computing things we have with us, is how quick it is to actually put together an application that can be launched on, a multitude of platforms, like through the Apple iOS system or Android or other systems. How quick it is to develop and distribute something that could be classed as medical device software, and how we've sort of almost got to sort of step back from that and make sure that it's planned and executed in a way that's commensurate with potentially being a medical device. So we've got to think about that and do things in a controlled manner. If we do that, it's a really powerful addition to our armory of the options we have for delivering healthcare to patients.
Specifically looking at the regulatory elements, what are the challenges when people are trying to get these to market and get them approved, CE marked?
I think our major challenges here are the growing realization from the regulators about how complicated this area is. And, when we're talking about software as a medical device or software in medical devices, we're looking at the implementation of software on these mobile devices I've already mentioned, or it could be embedded software, it could be on laptops, on servers. There's a myriad of places these things turn up and do potentially a lot of good. But it's very, very complicated in infrastructure, and it comes with its hazards. And certainly the regulators globally have noticed a sharp increase in the number of issues that have been experienced by users with these sorts of software-based products, or products that have a large software interface component. And they're very focused on it. So for the regulatory perspective, the regulators and the notified bodies, depending on which country, are very, very focused on software being developed, tested, and maintained in a controlled manner that allows a high degree of surety that the software is behaving and working as expected. And of course, this myriad environments we've got, especially if we're talking about mobile computing power, we've got to take into consideration the environment the software is potentially working in, and just as anybody doing this, reflect on how many times you get software updates on your mobile phone. It's every sort of 4 to 6 weeks, a new update, a new security patch comes out for the version of whatever software you're happening to use on your phone. And the consideration really starts coming here. We're potentially changing the operating environment the software is working in that scenario. So we're potentially changing our software. Maybe it's not going to work properly. We don't know. And as manufacturers and distributors of these materials, keeping control and making sure that products keep working is probably the biggest challenge that we face going forwards.
So what are the most common mistakes that you see when manufacturers are developing software? What are the big ones that you see that made all the time?
Well, certainly, and this is true of established companies and startup companies. In my own experience and experience of colleagues I work with regularly, we often get involved in projects where there's a software component. Maybe it's a bit of software that's on a phone that's going to be used to communicate with a tele-enabled device. It might be something like a blood pressure monitoring system, or a device that's going to be used to do blood glucose monitoring. A lot of these are enabled with Bluetooth-based technologies now that allow them to communicate and display information for you and forward that information onto physicians and healthcare professionals. This is all brilliant, and it's really, really useful. But we get involved in projects where the software is an afterthought, and the maintenance and making sure that it works correctly and has been developed in the correct manner is an afterthought. So one of the things that makes our hearts sink a little bit is when we get involved in a project and we're told that here's the application, here's what it's already been developed, and often those will be organizations that don't have a specific quality system element for the development of software, and don't really understand the standards and the expectations of the regulators around the design of medical software.
So what about the controls that are needed then during development of software?
Well, all medical devices require us to have a design and development system to do what we call product realization. And that's a formal series of steps that we need to go through to plan and implement designs. And software is no different from the design of any other medical device. But we have some specific standards out there that help us do that for these products. Key amongst those are documents in the IEC series. Probably most relevant, especially to mobile devices, would be IEC ISO 62304, which is about the life cycle management of software. And this asks us to go through a number of steps to develop the software and document exactly what we're doing, and set up an environment where we consistently can both develop the software and maintain it in a traceable manner. So we go through a revisions process. We have a controlled formal process of development, testing, and release. And making sure that software meets the requirements that we've set out for it. That's the same as we would for every design. Now, the danger with software is that it's very, very easy to go from initial concept and develop on the fly live, using a lot of the application development software that's available, and go from concept to finished product, potentially finished product, in a matter of days. And that potentially means you're missing out those steps and those checks and that formal review of risk, of usability, of user interface, all of those things that we need to consider and build into the design of software, and we miss out that formal process and the checks and balances that come with it. And what the regulators are basically saying, and this is as true in America as it is in Europe, is it's very, very, very difficult to test quality into software. It's to think of every scenario and test the software in those scenarios. So good software is reliant on a good system of development, well documented and controlled system. And that in turn is reliant, and to demonstrate that, you've got to have that level of formality. So any system can work to do this. Agile systems can work as well. More traditional V models for design and development all work absolutely fine for the development of software, as long as we're following these standards and capturing these expected elements which the regulators are looking for to demonstrate that we've got that level of control. And it controls the key. It's not just having it, we've got to document it and demonstrate it. We've got to have the evidence that we're there. And more often than not, what we're missing is that evidence. And it's so important to forget the regulatory side at the moment. It's so important to have that formality to any organization from a commercial basis, because unless you have that formality of structure and design and documentation, it's extremely hard to maintain software over the lifetime, over its usage, commercial usage lifetime. It's difficult to adapt for changes in operating systems or new interfaces or to fix bugs if you don't know how your product's been designed. So your maintenance and that long-term support of the product is really dependent on good documentation, basically, and working in a structured and consistent manner.